So trauma, I guess the experience of trauma or experience of these negative things, I think the way I can best describe it is that we feel like there's something wrong, or after experiencing something negative, or maybe a negative interaction or a negative situation, something that happens that kind of throws you off. And maybe it's a ton of things that build up, over time, or a ton of interactions that are similar. um, I think that we feel it, or we feel that, like, oh, something's wrong, or something that was unpleasant, and I think it kind of just sticks with us. For me, at least, it kind of just, this negative feeling just stuck in my head, and it almost feels like something, like knowing something's wrong but not knowing what it is. And I think that when like you don't know what it is or what exactly you're dealing with, you also don't know what to do about it. And I
Mm-hmm.
think it's a recurring, or it's a problem, and your brain just, I don't think your brain just doesn't let go of it. You kind of hold on to it. And it seems that almost seems like memory kind of functions that way. I think like most of us, when we think of memory, it seems like memory is supposed to be just a record. Like maybe it's like an
Mm-hmm.
objective record, a
Yeah,
chronological
yeah.
record of what happened, but it doesn't seem like, functionally, what it seems to be doing more of is holding on to these experiences, to
Mm-hmm.
prepare you for the future. And so
Mm-hmm.
when I experienced something, I guess, negative, um, it was just really a jumbled mess in my head, because I didn't even know how to identify these things. And so my brain just felt like it was stressing out. And I remember I didn't know how to describe what I was feeling, but I always came back to the word overwhelmed. I
Mm-hmm.
when somebody would ask me like what I was thinking, oftentimes I would just, like, what emotions am I thinking, or am I feeling? And like, is it angry, or is it like sad? And that I was like, no, I just feel overwhelmed. And I think
Mm-hmm.
that's the best way I can describe it. It just felt like
Yeah.
a huge mess to deal with. And because I didn't understand the situation, I didn't understand what exactly happened, then what I could do about it, and like what the problem was or how to solve it. Like, my brain just felt stressed, and it felt like it just kept telling me that, something's wrong, there's a problem, but I didn't know what to do with it. So kind of just stuck in there, and it just felt just overwhelming.
Yeah, and I think because of your experience, you are able to identify more now what's going on, and also just
Yeah.
reading the descriptions in this book, and then probably one of your experiences that you're seeing a lot more of this in other people as well, right?
Yeah.
Yeah. So how do you go about letting them know that, or explaining them to them what's happening, or showing that maybe you are understanding what is happening with them? How would you approach it, I guess?
I think that I don't know. I guess it's different for everybody. But one thing that I try to do, because I often feel very helpless in situations where, I guess, when somebody's struggling, because I mean, I know what it's like, but that doesn't mean I have the answers. I think everybody's
Mm-hmm.
different, and like, I still feel very powerless in these situations. But one thing that I do find helpful, or at least was helpful for me, and seems to be at least somewhat helpful for other people, is being able to explain what's going on, like, physiologically, or what's happening in the brain. And just having an explanation of that, or having this reflection of that, of their experience, which is like more tangible, like what I was explaining, how I felt with the Amen Clinic SPECT scans. That helps, because I think that's almost like a first step in being able to see that, there actually is something happening. And
Mm-hmm.
it makes it easier to acknowledge that, there is a problem, and it helps it makes it easier to see it.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, yeah, and I think sometimes we don't realize that it is our memory, or our brains holding on to these memory in order to protect us. And so I don't know if it would be helpful if we explain and share with others that, hey, this, there's nothing wrong per se with what your brain is doing, right? It's our brain's job is to collect all these inputs, experiential inputs, whether internally from our body senses or externally from our eyes, ears, skin, and make sense of that and trying to prevent future dangers. Right, so it has that capacity to hold on to these things, especially these strong emotions and experiences. So every time you sense or encounter something similar, because it's checking against this database, right? And sometimes maybe even keep replaying it, and so you kind of experience something, it checks it, and then it discovers something similar, and then replaying it. And of course, we know that sometimes the process end up refortifying these traumatic experiences, and they make it even more strong, even stronger, and so we end up being even more sensitive to these things, and it's a negative loop in a sense. But that's kind of our brain's job, is trying to protect us, right? So this memory center, the ganglia in our brain, it's supposed to do that, and so that we can have these quick automatic responses that prevent whatever damage that may be coming. And what's really interesting is also that this part of our brain's memory is not the conscious, logical, narrative part of our memory. So it's not like we see something and we describe it and we think through it and then decide whether it makes sense or not. This part of our brain is a fast acting part of our brain. It just reacts. But then the problem is that it doesn't really know if, let's say, if you just replaying the memory, it doesn't really know if this thing that it's sensing is happening now or is something that happens 10 years ago. To that part of the brain, it's happening now, because that's a dangerous signal. So you could be just ruminating, and then all these emotions come back, right? So that's what happens. Recently I was working with somebody with traumatic memories of just whole maybe 1 or 2 years of being afraid to go to school, like in elementary age. And every time she thinks about it, it's just intense. Like the intensity is 10 out of 10. All right. So because the brain cannot distinguish, are you going through it now? Or is it you're just thinking back? But then the physiological memory comes back, and it's replaying in our mind. All right, so it's kind of frozen in time in that sense. So maybe, sometimes I find that if I just let them know that it's, hey, that's what your brain is doing, and there's something wrong with you, your brain just want to protect you, and that's start integrating that memory to who you are now. Maybe it won't bother you so much. Yeah, because it's supposed to give you some emotional signal saying, hey, pay attention. But it doesn't need to be that strong, right? So we got to tone it down a little bit.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I think. Yeah, I think that's a really good point, because, like, I guess just sharing that that's what our brain is doing, like protecting us. Our brain is keeping those like dangers in mind to make sure we don't get hurt in the future. And yeah, like the brain or memory doesn't really like distinguish between like what happened like way in the past or where you are now. Like it feels all the same.
Yeah. So Dr. Vanderkolk wrote these 5 functions, list out these 5 functions of the brain that it's always doing, and we're thankful that it's doing that, because it's cataloging our experience so that it can protect us, right? So it's generating internal signals that register what our body needs, like food, energy, relationship, reproduction, and so forth. Very basic, all right? And then create a map of the world to point us where to go to satisfy these needs, where to get food, where to find safety, where to find mate, and so forth. And then generate the necessary energy and action to get us there. But the point four is usually where we get into trouble, because it's also picking up danger signals, right? And sometimes they are much stronger than anything else. And then so we are adjusting our actions based on whatever dangers we sense. And the funny thing is that nowadays, in modern world, we are experiencing a lot less physical danger, but a lot more this kind of emotional, relational stress. But to our brain, these emotional, relational stress feel just as real as these physiological dangers. So our bodies still react the same way. So we end up getting stuck there.
Yeah, I think that that also aligns with that whole the big T little T thing. Like big T is often like these one single major events, and often they're life-threatening events. But I think most of us experience more of the little T, where it's not like life-threatening per se, or I mean, we're not in a situation where like physically we're being threatened, but there's a lot of other like psychological or social or environmental stressors that contribute to this same, I guess, like stress reaction, where our brain reacts and basically warns us and tells us that you need to watch out for this, and that alarm is can be like almost the same strength.
Yeah, and that seems to be the type of experience that I'm seeing a lot more with the clients that are coming for neurofeedback, and oftentimes it's because of these social disconnect. This scary school environment or scary mission field, and they are being threatened over and over again, not in necessarily in physical danger, but it feels like they are they feel like their life is being threatened. But then that kind of built up, and then so they feel like, oh, there's something wrong with me, because why am I reacting like this? Why am I so fragile? Why am I so sensitive? Why am I so troublesome? I remember this young woman. In fact, I also discovered that she has some reading challenges, and it's not because she's not smart. It's just it's her brain's decoding difficulty with pictures and lines associated with light. I suspect she has Erlen syndrome, but she didn't know. She just thought that she was bad, and she hated school, and school felt like a dangerous place, and so. But she knows it's not, but it doesn't jive in her head. So so she would go to school and just have these uncontrollable shaking. And it's like a danger response, right? It's like the animals after they're being chased and attacked, they shake to shake off things. But she couldn't help herself, right? So, but I think I'm trying to let her know that it's just literally just your brain trying to protect you,